And welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm Miranda Kahn, here with a look at some of the stories making headlines from around the world. And as you can hear, celebrations are underway in Nigeria today. There you go. After the country held its first ever democratic transfer of power, and now the Obama administration says it's ready to help in the fight against Boko Haram. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Nigeria. He's expected to offer military assistance. Army General Ray Odinero says he's, quote, incredibly disappointed to see what he calls a fractured Iraq. The Army's top general says he's expected Iraq to be doing much better than it is, and admits the problem lies with leadership. Odinero says Iraqi forces need to have the will to fight. FIFA officials will meet in Switzerland today to vote for their next president. The vote comes just a day after the governing body of soccer was rocked by the largest corruption scandal the sport has ever seen. And now the Washington Post says this isn't just about white-collar crime. A recent article points to human rights abuses in Qatar, which is set to host the World Cup in the year 2022. China is engaging in a war of words, saying it's prepared to go to war against the U.S. The tensions stem over disputed territory in the South China Sea, and now Arizona Senator John McCain calls the situation disturbing.
We just received information about mobile artillery now being placed in the islands.
And although McCain is concerned, he says the U.S. will not have a conflict with China.
It's a long way away, but a story that garners a lot of attention.
It's weird to even think that China would say that.
Well,
US.
not so.
I mean, you kind of thought that, I don't know.
I think back a few years ago when I was covering Congressman Alan West and his campaign, and he gave a presentation to his constituents about this was about 3 or 4 years ago, about the concern of the Chinese Navy and these aircraft carrier killer missiles that they were now deploying, and then he talked about their interest in the South China Sea, and sooner or later the world is becoming small, so small that there is going to be potentially a conflict between the U.S. and China over shipping lanes. Not just there, but also we look at Central America, where China is working on an even bigger version of the Panama Canal. And
Russia is also fighting for territory, so you're right, the world is definitely getting smaller.
But considering that the U.S. market is so crucial to China and everything that they manufacture over there, how far are they really willing to go? And if they have a population where they feel like they no longer need the U.S. market, the Walmarts of the world, to sell those Chinese-made products, how far are they willing to take this?
Ugh, I don't even like to think about that.
You know, earlier this week, too, we talked about Chinese officials warning the U.S. to stop those surveillance flyovers near their artificial islands that they are constructing. They are also threatening the U.S. with an international incident, whatever that means, if these missions don't stop.
Yeah, and the U.S. is not backing down. There are reports that China is moving weapons now to its artificial islands in the South China Sea.
Let's take a look now how the U.S., though, has a new weapon, which could add a little wrinkle to this story. A former Defense Department spokesman, J.D. Gordon, tells Hardline's Ed Berliner this weapon can knock out computers from miles away.
There was just a test last week in Utah where this weapon, this EMP missile, was very successful in blanking out all the computers at a base in Utah. It even blanked out the cameras that were looking at the test. So it's very successful, and I think this is going to be more along the lines of what we see in the future. This is the future of warfare.
Is this something that our animation here is showing basically getting, and you mentioned being on the ground, but what about going after another plane in flight? Can we take out that electronics yet with that sort of pinpoint accuracy?
Well, not at this point in time, it doesn't seem, but you know, there are new technologies every day that our industry is working on. That's why it's so important that we fund these type of projects and that our industries are strong so they can produce these type of weapons. We have a lot of competitors in the world, Russia and China. That's also why it's very important that we defend our secrets, because we know the Russians and Chinese are trying to hack into us, and sometimes successful, on a daily basis. So we've got to protect our industrial secrets, and we've got to keep the military edge.
Are we really ahead? Because the Russians are working on this, the Chinese have got to be working on this. So do you see this as a weapon where we are really exponentially ahead of the game and having something like this that's effective?
And I think we're ahead of the game when it comes to this EMP missile that can fly over an area and take out an enemy's computer systems. That's positive. But, you know, an EMP weapon in general, which could be a nuclear blast above our skies, is something that the Russians possess that capability, so do the Chinese, so do the North Koreans, and unfortunately, most likely the Iranians will in a short amount of time.
That nuclear agreement deal, June 30th, and we heard from Javad Zarif.
Right.
From Iran yesterday, the chief negotiator on the Iranian side, saying probably not going to happen. What do you think?
I know you were going to ask me that. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough call.
I don't think anything's going to happen other than perhaps another delay to the negotiations. John Kerry not going to let this one die because it's part of his legacy. He's desperately trying to have something tangible to hold on to, but
I don't know if that's a legacy that you want, though.
Nobody does. Maybe John Kerry does. Who knows? Coming back, another hour of Newsmax Now, right after this.